Blog Talk Radio.
This is the VOCR, the voice of the Canadian Rockies. The following information presented is the opinion of the speakers and not necessarily the opinion of the TerraJet network. All information provided is gained from open source and available on the internet. Caveat emptor 347-324-3287, 347-324-3287.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, madame and messieurs, boys and girls, mes enfants. Welcome to another edition of VOCR Radio. I am your host, Colin Knight, a.k.a. Guru Nostra. It's great to be here. Lots to get to tonight, so fill up your glasses, find your favorite seat, crank up the volume, and we'll be right back.
Of all the objectives we seek, first and foremost is the establishment of lasting world peace. We know only too well that war comes not when the forces of freedom are strong. It is when they are weak that tyrants are tempted.
Not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Ladies and gentlemen, the purveyor of political pontification.
Good evening, everyone. Glad you could make it tonight. It is Thursday, August the 7th, 2014, 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mountain, 10 p.m. East Coast, 4 a.m. London, England, and 5 a.m. in Israel and Gaza. Currently, it is 23 degrees Celsius in Calgary, Alberta. It's about 72, 73 degrees Fahrenheit for our imperial friends. Now, tonight, we will continue our exploration of news and events which persist on eroding our freedom around the world. We hope you'll join in on the conversation by phone. If you're live, 347-324-3287, or if you're listening on archive at a later time, you can always email me at vocr2012@gmail.com. And if you are listening to this on a live feed, why not head over to blogtalkradio.com, come to the TerraChat net section, and join our virtual studio chat room. Real-time interaction with our team and other delightful listeners who pass questions from here and there. We have some special shout-outs tonight, but before I get to that, every so often in the background, you may hear a squealing. I have a fan that looks like it's about to kick off into the mortal coil, and if I disappear quickly, it'll be to put the fire out because the engine has burnt up. But anyway, I digress. Special shout-outs tonight. Gwen in Cardiff, England, thanks for your information, Gwen. Appreciate it. John in Edinburgh, Scotland, thanks for your contact, John. And to Shani Bear, many happy returns, kiddo. And to the Scottish lass, happy you are feeling better. And of course, last but not least, the Southeast Bricky's much better half, Beth. It was good to see you again, if only from afar. And by the way, TAS is her mother's daughter.
Excuse me, Governor. You go mail.
First up is Jock from Aberdeen emailed, Guru, what is your opinion of the legacy left in the Middle East after the coalition forces shed blood and money to give those heathens a better society? And on a secondary note, should Scotland be allowed to secede UK rule? Regards, Jock. Well, Jock, the deaths of Western forces in Iraq and Afghanistan were nothing more than sacrificial offerings to our enemies, buildings and infrastructure which are now being dismantled, destroyed, and defaced by ISIS, Taliban, and Hamas et al. Proves that societies in the Middle East cannot move forward into the 21st century until their bastardized understanding of man-made writings claimed as God's word or gospel through a warmongering tribesman experiences a reformation, much like the Christian faith experienced during the 16th century. Now remember, 200 years after Muhammad and Islam was proclaimed, 1600 years after the birth of Christ, and 2500 years after the revelation of God's word by Moses. Reformation. So, Jock, I doubt that I shall be alive to see an Islamic Reformation. I don't see the billions of peaceful followers around the world in my lifetime overpowering a small faction of fundamental religious nutjobs. As for Scotland taking independence from the UK, that is more complicated as it first appears, much like the Quebec independence attempts in Canada. Scottish independence should be a matter for citizens of Scotland, and the ties that bind, the wounds that fester between Scotland and England must be addressed, must be resolved, and the wounds must be cauterized to prevent further loss of the shared blood both countries have given to create a powerful United Kingdom of Great Britain, which of course is England, Scotland and Wales. So I hope that answers both of your questions. Diane from LA, I found your show from a link a friend sent to me with your YouTube broadcast a few weeks ago. The visual presentation supporting your statements was excellent. Well, thank you, Dad. I was very pleased to follow your link and listen to the past shows. Question: where is Night Talk show lately? I hear all kinds of stories about UFOs and strange happenings. Keep up with the great work, Diane. Well, Diane, Night Talk lives, and we will air again sometime this month with probably a 2-hour special. The reason Night Talk went dark is simple. The paranormal radio world exploded. There are hundreds and possibly thousands of stations, websites, blogs, pumping out a diatribe of claimed paranormal information. There are professional guests that troll through one radio network after another, pumping their books or their CDs or their videos, and not really getting to the heart of the information that people are searching for. Night Talk Radio is an independent service. We do not accept gratuities or fee for the information we provide, nor do we pay fee to our guests. We are an independent service, and Night Talk Radio will broadcast, but only when the value to our listeners warrants. We commit to you, the listener, and not necessarily the budding authors who wish to deepen the mystical murk. We commit to you that the information we provide will be of quality and the right quantity given the circumstances. So stay tuned, Diane. All will be revealed in time. Thank you for finding us on the net and also YouTube. Make sure you spread the good word. Okay, let's do one more. Malcolm from Timmins, Ontario wrote, "Great coverage on the Ontario election mess. You nailed it, brother." Thank you. Your female caller was opinionated and enlightened and definitely passionate about her beliefs and those of Ontarians. Unfortunately, Wynne is the re-elected Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne. Unfortunately, Wynne was re-elected and her insane budget is now... What does Alberta think of this mess? Regards, Malcolm. Well, personally, I was shocked that Wynne made it back in. Equally shocked that Ontario voters allowed her budget to pass. And time will show whether her recovery plan will actually work. What is known is that the union pension debt and the influences unions have over the government in Ontario will make or break the province. We shall be discussing this and, of course, some Alberta politics later in the show. So thanks for your email, Malcolm. I do appreciate it, and keep it coming. So let's take a pit stop, recharge your libations, smoke them if you got them. When we return, we shall dive headfirst into the murky waters of provincial, national, and international politics. We invite you to stay tuned.
The Voice continues after this.
Mr. Speaker, I thought nothing this president could ever say or do would surprise me anymore. But this flushed and breathless rush to embrace terrorists launching rockets at Israeli children is an unprecedented act of cowardice and betrayal.
Now, we've impeached a president for lying about sex with an intern. A president has resigned in the face of certain impeachment for covering up a burglary. Why wouldn't we impeach this president for not protecting and defending Americans in the bloodbath known as Benghazi?
Attorney General Eric Holder came out and he said that the inflow of Westerners into the civil war in Syria is, quote, the most frightening thing, more frightening than anything I have seen as Attorney General. You had the foreign policy experts in the Wall Street Journal talk about how this is instability not seen since the 1970s. Basically an all-out war, what's looking like an all-out war in Israel and the Palestinian territories. You see the situation with the terrorist group taking over vast territory in Iraq and in Syria. You see Russian aggression in Ukraine. You see concerns about Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. It doesn't seem like a time to be touting tranquility on the international scene. I mean, do you think the president's foreign policy bears any responsibility for any of this, or there's anything that he can do about any of this?
347-324-3287, 347-324-3287.
And let's take a quick dip and a little swim through provincial politics before we get to the national stuff. Here in Alberta, we have a number of provincial politicians, both in government and in opposition, with their panties in a bunch. Apparently, the ex-premier, Alison Redford, who resigned as premier in March under a cloud of financial chicanery, has again resigned her MLA seat. Now, that's the member of the Legislative Assembly seat. When revelations were leaked about the private government fleet of jets, apparently the premier did not wish to share, and her staff or someone would book all seats under fictitious passenger names and then cancel the seats just prior to departure, assuring that the premier had a private jet to official functions. Now, it's all a little bit sordid, if you ask me, but the upper politicians are all known to be crooked and corrupt. Corrupted by the openness of taxpayer coffers, expense account, meeting. Career politicians and bureaucrats have learned the system. They can hide, sneak, pilfer at any whim. And when discovered, they can play ignorant of the game or unable to understand the rules, much like the now suspended Senator Duffy and Senator Whalen's troubles. Or maybe we should say suspended, much like the alleged Senator Duffy. The old guard wanted rid of Alison Redford, first from the provincial leadership position, and then as a member of the legislative. The old guard got what they want. And today, the Auditor General's report is tabled for review, which outlines the financial transgressions of the previous premier. To Canadian politician, this is like an impeachment. So within the next 18 months, the ruling Conservatives, led by a politically elected internal member, shall lead the province into the next election. The opposition party, known as Wild Rose Party, shall be nipping at the Conservative heels, and some believe, with good question, that they have a good chance at dethroning the long-held Conservative government seat. By the way, footnote, Wild Rose are breakaway Conservatives. Now, in a statement issued late today, former Premier Alison Redford used government airplanes inappropriately for personal parties and purposes, according to the Alberta Auditor General report. In the report released Thursday, the Auditor General found that the aura of power around Redford and her staff led to a perception that the influence of the office should not be questioned. Overall, the expense practices and use of public assets by Premier Redford and her office have fallen short of publicly stated goals. Now, he's been pretty rough on it. He thinks, anyway. And he stated, "We observed a tendency to work around or ignore rules in order to fulfill requests coming from the Premier's office in ways that," are you ready for this? "In ways that avoided leaving the Premier with personal responsibility for decisions." Go figure. Where have we heard this before? Plausible deniability. In provincial government, plausible deniability. Now, for those of you that are following Alberta politics, what's your opinion on Redford? Do you believe in plausible deniability? 347-324-3287, or by email at a later time, vocr2012@gmail.com.
347-324-3287, 347-324-3287. Voice your opinion. Participate in your future. Become engaged in socio-political events. Say your piece. We are VOCR, the voice of the Canadian Rockers, on blogtalkradio.com.
Now, as we look east into Ontario, Canada, Kathleen Wynne, the newly re-elected Liberal Premier, facing a projected $12.5 billion budget shortfall this year and expected to run deficits for another 3 years before balancing its books magically. The Liberals have already warned public servants that there's no more money for wage increases, almost like biting the hand that got her elected. Ontario is in fiscal trouble. The Liberal mismanagement and cronyism continues to take the province into the abyss. Ontario used to be the centre of Canadian heavy manufacturing. It is now bordering on a have-not province. Their costs are skyrocketing, the union contracts are coming up for renewal, and all those union workers who put their faith in their union premier are now second-guessing their decision.